The New York Mets have played in 5 series this season. They have won every single series they have played. They're in first place in the National League East with a commanding 4-game lead over every other team. They're on pace to 114 games. This team is really good. On today's show, I will recap this series over the weekend with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I also want to spend a lot of time talking about Starling Marte, who hasn't even gotten off to the hottest of starts yet. His impact is felt each and every game. Then in the final segment today, I will preview what lies ahead against the St. Louis Cardinals, covering all of that on this edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans who are watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, did the New York Mets look great this weekend? Did they look like the best team in baseball playing a really bad team in Arizona? No. They had some sloppy wins in there. This was not their best brand of baseball. And you play a team like the Diamondbacks, should you sweep them? Sure, you should sweep them. And the Mets didn't sweep them in either of the two series. But you know what? It really doesn't matter, because if we look at this team and what they've done this year, they've accomplished all you could have wanted them to through 17 games. I mean, they have won every single series they played. And when you beat the Giants in a 4-game set earlier in the week, it's okay to not get the sweep against the Diamondbacks. I was saying going into the week, as long as the Mets split that series against the Giants and then they swept the series against Arizona, it's a good week. Well, guess what? They got 5 wins. That is a fantastic week. You look at this division right now, you have the Marlins, who are in second, 4 games back, and then you have the Braves and the Phillies, who are 5 games back. So this Mets team is really jumping out to the lead that we hoped they would early in the season. And so there's no reason to knock them even when they play a terrible game on Saturday. It was a bullpen game on Saturday. Trevor Williams got lit up. It's going to happen. You can't win every game, but they find a way to win more often than not. And you look at the first game of the series, and that was a perfect example of that. Not their best brand of baseball. You know, David Peterson was really good. So again, the starting pitching, as long as it's not Trevor Williams, has been pretty much unbelievable all year long. And Peterson goes 5 2/3, allows just 1 run. You had James McCann hit his first homer of the season in the 7th inning to give the Mets a 5-1 lead. And I will say real quick, before we dive into the bullpen meltdown, I actually went to bed early on Friday night. Friday night's kind of an off night for me. No podcast. I was tired. You know, that game was just sloppy. It wasn't trending in a direction where I really felt like I needed to stay up for it. I said, all right, you know what? For once in my life, I'm just going to go to bed early on a West Coast game. Why not? You know, like, we'll wake up tomorrow, we'll watch the highlights. I got the game recorded. I can go back. I can see what happened, see what I missed. But I didn't feel like staying up late. And so I say all of that to mention that James McCann's home run, didn't technically see it, so it doesn't count towards the jersey bet. I'm sorry, James. I know that was a huge moment for you in this early battle we have this season, trying to see if you can disprove my prediction that you would be terrible again. And you had a big moment, and I didn't witness it. I apologize, but it doesn't count. It just doesn't. But the bullpen, as I mentioned, collapsed in that game. Chasen Shreve did not have his best outing. He gives up a run, only gets 2 outs in the 7th inning. Trevor May bails him out and gets an out to complete that 7th, but then runs into his own trouble in the 8th, giving up a double and a home run that allowed the Diamondbacks to cut into the Mets' lead, making it a 5-4 game. Edwin Diaz gives up a homer in the 9th, and it was all tied up, and that game could have slipped through the Mets' fingers, but Diaz found a way to get out of that inning, and then the Mets scored a run in the top of the 10th. Thanks to the ghost runner, you had someone starting on second base. So it was Jeff McNeil. James McCann, in a game where I did not get to see him, moves the runner over with a ground ball to the right side. McCann's on third base. With 2 outs in the inning, Starling Marte came up, and he hit a slow ground ball, but he was able to leg it out. This is why we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Marte today, because even when he doesn't do anything impressive, he didn't hit that ball hard. His athleticism puts pressure on the defense in a way that the Mets just haven't had that type of an impact player in years. And in this instance, it wins them a ball game. He beats out that infield single. It has to go to replay review, but Marte knew that he had it. The Mets get that lead. Seth Lugo had a fantastic weekend. He gets two big strikeouts with that ghost runner starting on second base in the bottom half of the inning to eventually strand that runner. And the Mets are able to escape with that win, which was crucial because after everything that happened on Saturday, it allowed them to go into the rubber match on Sunday with a chance to win the series. And Tyler McGill delivered for this team once again. He was excellent, nearly made it through 7 innings, gave up a home run in the fourth, and a double and a single in the seventh to allow 2 runs. But altogether, just another really strong start for McGill as he continues to cement a place for himself long term in this Mets rotation. In the 6th inning, Starling Marte was once again manufacturing runs and winning you a series with his legs. He doubles, which was great to see, but it was also one of those doubles where he really did leg it out. Gets second base, steals third, bad throw, allows him to come on home. Just like that, you have a lead in the game where everything was knotted up at 1 for a majority of the game. That gives you the 2-1 lead. The Mets were able to tack on some more runs. In the 7th, they had a 2-run rally. J.D. Davis walked. Louis Guillorme got a hit. James McCann got hit by a pitch. Travis Jankowski walked to score 1 run. And then Marte again gets an RBI, but he really just got hit by a pitch with the bases loaded. That scored another. That gave the Mets a more comfortable lead. And then in the 8th, J.D. Davis homered, and Guillorme doubled and would later score as James McCann once again was in the middle of things, but this time it was an error by the Diamondbacks that allowed Guillorme to come around and score. But the bottom line is the Mets end up coming away with a convincing victory. Seth Lugo gets the final out of the 7th for McGill, then pitches a strong scoreless 8th. And then Joely Rodriguez comes on in the 9th and got the job done and looked good against some righties. So now Rodriguez is starting to build some positive momentum. He's looked a lot better as of late. Another good development from the bullpen this weekend is Adonis Medina. Came in, or Medina. He had a really strong outing on Saturday, pitching in garbage time, and the Mets were already out of that game, but he looked impressive. So that could be another arm that the Mets could use this year. But the bottom line is you look up another series victory you can chalk up for the Mets. It's just been great to see them continue to find a way to win. And now you got a tougher opponent coming up in the Cardinals, but there's no reason to think the Mets can't go into that series with Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett on the bump for the first 2 games and get another series dub. They're going to lose a series eventually, but the way they're playing right now, this is exactly what we wanted to see. This Mets team is about to, after they play the Cardinals, they're going to start to get into a nice big mix of games where they're going to face off against the National League East. If they can carry this momentum throughout this month and into May for the first couple of weeks, they're going to look up and they might have a 10-game lead in this division, and that's not even with any contributions from Jacob deGrom. It is really special to see. In the next segment, though, what I want to do is focus in more on Starling Marte. He has really impressed so far, and he hasn't even really started to get going offensively yet. What could that mean for the Mets? I'll talk about that in a minute. But with the spring in the air, it is that time for renewal and growth, personally and professionally. So as your small business grows, LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find people you want to talk to faster and for free. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then you add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. There's simple tools like screening questions, making it easier to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find candidates you want to talk to faster. I don't know if you know this, but nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn each week. So make sure you post your job free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As I mentioned in the open, I write for justbaseball.com as their managing editor, and I wrote an article on October 29th that I also did a podcast on that you can find on the Locked On Mets podcast feed on Apple or Spotify or on YouTube, talking about Starling Marte and Curtis Granderson. And the comparison I was making at the time, again, this is October 29th, before free agency even opened, was that back in 2014, the Mets signed Curtis Granderson to a 4-year deal, and Granderson was heading into his age 33 season, a very similar player profile to Starling Marte, though at that time, Granderson's game started to be more predicated on the home run ball compared to the stolen bases. But these are guys that were center fielders at a similar age, at a similar point in their career. And I made the case for why the Mets should sign Marte, because the last time they signed a free agent of this caliber, it was one of the best signings, or maybe arguably the best signing they have made in the past decade. So here's a little thing that I wrote in that article. Here's one of the opens. I said, when we look back at the Granderson signing in particular, it could be very instructive for this current Mets team to remember this offseason. Granderson showed value that a quality outfielder can bring to the top of your lineup, even in their mid-30s. This is especially important to remember this offseason, where Starling Marte could have the biggest impact of any free agent for the Mets in 2022. I went on to talk about all the flashy shortstops on the market, and Freddie Freeman and Chris Bryant and all these players the Mets fans were obsessed over. And I was trying to make the case that because the Mets had Jeff McNeil, they had Francisco Lindor, they had Pete Alonso, that their infield was in pretty good shape. Also, with the prospects coming up, with Louis Guillorme, with JD Davis, they did not have to make that their biggest priority to address their lineup. I was saying that if you look at Michael Conforto departing in free agency, and that's also something I guess I should mention as well. Michael Conforto will have shoulder surgery, or just did have shoulder surgery that takes him out for this season. So a strange turn of events there, as Conforto, who remained unsigned, will now not play baseball this year. The Mets will not get a comp pick for Conforto, but more importantly, you got to feel bad for him. This is a guy that a year ago was looking at a 9-figure contract, and unfortunately, after a down season, and maybe Scott Boras overplaying their hand in the market, and then an unfortunate injury, he now finds himself just outside of baseball entirely for a year. I really do hope that he finds a way to get back on the field in 2023 and gets that money in the future, because I think Conforto is a good guy that deserves it. But regardless, getting back to Marte, they needed to replace Conforto in free agency. And with Brandon Nimmo set to be a free agent after this season as well, I talked about why Marte was a great fit. I said in the article, while Marte has not played the position throughout his career, he does have a strong enough arm to shift into right field, allowing Brandon Nimmo to continue to play center field for the Mets. If Nimmo once again endures an injury-plagued season, Marte provides a much better insurance out in center field than Kevin Pillar did this season. So, again, predicting that Marte would be a right fielder, we've seen that play out. We've seen the fit next to Nimmo works, and we also know that if Nimmo does depart, it just keeps flexibility open in the future to either shift Marte back over to center like the Mets did at one point with Curtis Granderson when they got Jay Bruce, or they could keep Marte in right, let him age gracefully out there, and try to get a different center fielder if Nimmo ultimately departs. But as I say in this article, I said of all the free agents the Mets could sign this offseason, no one fits their position of need more than Marte. If history repeats itself, Marte can be a veteran leader for a Mets team that makes noise in October, just like Curtis Granderson did back in 2015. I'll leave a link to that article in the episode description if you want to check it out, or if you want to check out the podcast as well. The podcast was linked in that article. And the bottom line is, if you looked at Granderson's numbers over those years, you can make the argument he was the Mets' best position player from 2014 through 2017. He was great throughout the life of that contract, had an unbelievable season in 2015. I mean, he literally was the Mets' best position player based on F4, was even better than Yoenis Cespedes in the second half that year, which I know is really hard to believe. And what we're seeing right now with Starling Marte is these guys who are super athletic, they just change the game for you. And this year, Marte is hitting 254, 319 on base, 381 slugging. Like, the surface numbers aren't great. You look at the advanced metrics, it's not like he's hitting the ball really hard. His outs above average isn't even good, but the eye test tells us something completely different. And he has scored a run in 8 of the Mets' first 15 games played, and he has RBIs in 3 of those other 7 games where he did not score. So the bottom line is, in 15 games played, he's put a run on the board in at least 11 of those games. So with the runs and RBIs he's producing, he's been one of the most effective Mets, despite the fact that he's only hitting 254 when this is a guy that generally is going to hit at least 275 year in and year out. There's a hot streak coming where Marte is going to be even better. and you look at runs responsible for this year. So if you combine RBIs and runs scored, you have Starling Marte and Francisco Lindor both being responsible for 21 or 24 runs. 11 scored is second to Lindor. 13 RBIs is second to Pete Alonso, who has 16. His speed adds a dynamic this team has not had since a prime Jose Reyes. He is impacting the game, making great plays in the outfield. He is really impacting the game on the bases, and he has just been a spark plug that has helped catapult this team into first place and off to just one of their best starts in franchise history. It's been really impressive to watch, and I was right. Had to say it. I'm sorry. We will preview what lies ahead next against the St. Louis Cardinals. But first, I want to tell you about the best tasting protein bar ever, which of course is Built Bar. Built Bars come low in calories, low in sugar, low in fat, but they're high in protein and high in fiber. These really are treats that can replace any sweet that you don't want to be eating in your pantry that's unhealthy for you. Built Bars are the perfect way to start your day, perfect way to recover after a workout, or if you just want a healthy dessert at the end of the day. They also have the amazing puffs, which are the first ever protein infused marshmallows. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat that comes covered in 100% real chocolate with incredible flavors like the cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. They're all so good. They're sure to be your new favorite treat. And Built Bar also comes out with new limited time flavors often. So make sure you check built.com to see what's new. And once you're there, use our promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so let's preview the Mets' upcoming series against the St. Louis Cardinals, another first place team. They got a half game lead over the Brewers right now in the NL Central. They did fail to complete a sweep over the Reds this weekend. The Reds had lost, I believe it was 11 or 12 straight. So they were due for a win. St. Louis can't feel bad about that. You look at their season, they've had a couple of games rained out, so they've played less games than the Mets, but they also have yet to lose a series. They won their first series against Pittsburgh. They only played one game against the Royals, with the second game of a two-game set getting rained out, but they did beat the Royals in that one game. They then split a four-game set against the Brewers, the one team that they are probably most competing with this year in the NL Central. And then they've been able to beat up on the Marlins and the Reds, winning a couple of series this past week. You look at their hitters, Nolan Arenado has been carrying the offense, one of the hottest hitters in baseball. 364 average to start the year, 426 on base, 727 slugging with those 5 home runs. Tommy Edman, 3 home runs, 313 average, 400 on base, 563 slugging. You have other guys like Tyler O'Neill, Paul Goldschmidt, Harrison Bader, Paul DeYoung, Yadier Molina that we know can all hurt you. With Bader, mostly with speed. With O'Neill, Goldschmidt, power. Paul DeYoung is one of the most ridiculous Mets killers ever. So the fact that he started the season cold is very, very, very suspicious. I predict a huge breakout from Paul DeYoung because that's all I've ever seen. This guy just rakes against Mets pitching. So you have to be worried about that. Let's actually, you know what? Little audible here. Have not pulled up his stats, but I actually want to now. Let's look at the career splits for Mr. Paul DeYoung against the New York Mets. This is just going to make you infuriated, Mets fans, but I got to see what we're talking about here. So let's look. Paul DeYoung, Baseball Reference, scrolling through. Opponent, New York Mets. I'm going to sort by OPS. Shockingly, the Mets aren't the team he has destroyed the most, but the other two teams ahead of them are the Orioles and the Rangers, who he's only played 3 games against. In the 24 games against the Mets, he has a 347 average, 375 on base, 765 slugging, an OPS over 1,000. He's got 10 home runs. Wow. In 24 games against the Mets, 11 doubles, 17 RBIs, 20 runs scored. He has hit more home runs against the Mets than any other team outside of the NL Central. And if we just look at who DeYoung is throughout his career, it's not like this is the best offensive force. He's a career 239 hitter, 311 on base, 440 slugging, OPS plus of 101, OPS of 752 is for his career. So a replacement level hitter who just rakes against the Mets. We'll see if he does that again. Albert Pujols has actually got off to a good start, I should mention as well, when it comes to that Cardinals lineup. He's been their third best position player with an 883 OPS and 2 home runs on the young season, 19 away from 700. So if Pujols hits a home run in this series, I'm not going to lie, I won't be upset about it just because I love history and I want to see Pujols get to that number this year. It's a lot of home runs for a guy that is in his 40s, but we'll see if he's able to pull that off. When it comes to the pitching matchups in this series, though, you have to love the Mets' chances. Max Scherzer versus Miles Mikolas in game one. Mikolas has a 1.76 ERA on the season, but I would not be scared of Michaelis. He's a pitcher who's had success early, but it's not like he is this bona fide ace that Max Scherzer obviously is. Scherzer has a 2.50 ERA. It's coming off his best start in a Mets uniform where he had that perfect game going. He's 3-0 on the year. The Mets have won every single game that Scherzer's been on the mound, and I expect nothing different on Monday. Then you got Chris Bassett versus Jordan Hicks in game two. If Jordan Hicks was fully stretched out, that would be an interesting pitching matchup where you might give the Cardinals an edge because this guy's one of the most electric arms in baseball, and he has a 1.29 ERA in the season. The thing is, he is moving from the bullpen into the rotation, and really, he's in this mode where he's like this super starter, not the or opener is the word I'm looking for. Like the one of those guys that's going to come in and maybe face your lineup once. He's only gone 3 innings in a start so far this year, so even though he's electric, I don't think that he sees the Mets lineup more than one time through, maybe two times at most. So hopefully you can maybe scratch something off him. But if Bassett holds up and gives you 6 or 7, this could be a game where the Mets can get into that Cardinals bullpen. Then you got Carlos Carrasco going against Steven Matz in the final game of this series. Steven Matz, you know that there is going to be a lot of attention paid to that game because you remember how much him and his agent infuriated Steve Cohen. So we'll see if the Mets can go out and win one for their owner in that game and what could be a rubber match. Maybe the Mets are able to take those first two games. They'll be going for a sweep by the time we get to Wednesday. But Carlos Carrasco has been incredible this year, a 1.1 or 1.47 ERA. Matt, a 5.27 ERA, though he has righted the ship a bit over his last couple of starts after a really rough first outing. So you look at this series as a whole, I think the Mets really do have an edge when it comes to the pitching matchups in each of these games. The Cardinals, though, are due to break out offensively. Again, outside of Arenado and Edman and a little bit of Pujols, this lineup has really struggled. So they are due to break out. We remember how much they did break out against the Mets in Citi Field last September. I was unfortunately at a couple of those games. It was not fun. So we'll see if the Mets can get a little bit of revenge in this series and continue to extend their streak of winning every series that they have played. Let me look real quick at the final series of this week. They're off on Thursday, and I believe they're playing in Citi Field against the Phillies starting on Friday night. So that's going to be a really important stretch where they'll play the Phillies, and then they'll play the Braves, and they'll play the Phillies again before playing the Nationals. So a lot of games against the NLEs coming up. Last chance to try to fatten up on some other teams before you play those interdivision games. So this will be an important series for the Mets to try to take it. Regardless, so that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan, but we call him Sully. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to learn about everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.